my intentions, because it's been such a full week. There's so much I want to say, so I might get distracted. So if I start with the intentions, it'll keep me clear, hopefully. So the intentions are for us to understand, at least somewhat, what I mean by spiritual diversity, to look at the spiritual diversity in our own journey, and appreciate it and enjoy. So big intention is just to really feel the joy of our own path of spiritual diversity, and then other people's paths of spiritual diversity. And then finally to really tap into our own home and our own cosmology. Okay, so just to leave here really contemplating, and hopefully through the week, what our cosmology is of the world of life. Spiritual diversity. So the theme for February is diversity and inclusivity, and I added on integrity because none of it works if we're not in integrity with ourselves. So last week we had the Interfaith Rally, for those of you who went. Who went to the Love Rally? Woohoo! We celebrated the different religions and expressions, the interfaith group, organization in the Tri-Valley area. What? Oh, sorry, I wasn't really there. So the interfaith organization in the Tri-Valley area celebrates all the, oh, there you are, hello. The different religions of our world, and they do an amazing and remarkable events. They create events. They have a Wednesday, once a month Wednesday religion chat, and they take an issue, and then they ask different teachers from, or minister, or an imam, or a rabbi, or whoever that spiritual leader is for the organization, to speak about how their particular faith deals with this particular issue. So it really opens up to the idea of how are we diverse, and to appreciate the uniqueness. And what we're learning is growing into, and we have been, I think, for really since the 60s, it really started coming alive, is that diversity does not mean separation. That diversity arises from oneness. We recognize that underneath all these different religions, our different religions is this one life and this one power. And so the honoring of the different religions a lot of times tends to be very exoterically focused. Exoteric is that which is more external, which is more known to the public, to the generalized public. So we know that Muslims go to, I know what they go. Thank you. A mosque, and Jewish people go to a temple, and churches and cathedrals, and shamans are out in the fields. We know all the externals. We don't know. You may not. It's part of what our education is, learning about the externals, and that there is an imam and a rabbi and a priest and a minister, and they all have different roles, and a shaman and Zen master and Hindu gurus. And so we learn the externals of the different faiths. Today what I want to talk about is the esoteric. And the esoteric is about that which is interior, so less people see it. It's less public. And it's really when we start moving away from just the I don't want to say superficial, because it's not superficial at all. They're very rich, the externals, but to go deeper into the diversity in the interior. Because one of the things I think we confuse, so I was just I had a conversation with someone, and they said, well, it's like a room, and there's all these doors going into the room, and we're knocking at all these different doors, and one time we're going to open a door, but once we go inside, it's all the same, it's all one. And no, it's not. And I think that's one of the things we really want to, as we are growing as a community on our own spiritual journey, to really understand that even when we say oneness, our understanding and experience of oneness is very different. We don't all mean the same thing. We don't actually all have the same experience of oneness, and to start really honoring the diversity of what that means. I think one of the things that's really brought this more forefront to my awareness to talk about is because I'm facilitating a group on Thursdays. We do it twice a month on Thursdays. It's a self-realization. If you know Self-Realization Fellowship, they have Yogananda's home study lessons. And there were several, we meet twice a month. And there are a few people who are in that class who are also taking a Science of Mind class, an Ernest Holmes class in the evening, a certificated class. And what they were saying was that it was so hard to go from one to another because they were so different. It was like you were in one mindset as you're doing Yogananda's lessons, and we're talking all about sort of what his lesson is for that week. And then it's like moving to an entirely different mindset when you're in a Ernest Holmes class and talking about science of mind. And yet they're both talking about oneness. So how could that be? How can it be so, how can you feel a shift in yourself so much? And then it was either a year or two ago, I did a Zen class with Shunryu Suzuki, and that was a 10-week class, and we did the Zen Mind, Beginner Mind, and I also have 2 books full of anecdotes about Shunryu Suzuki, so I sent those out to students almost every day for those 10 weeks. So we're getting into the vibration of Shunryu Suzuki now, and that was an entirely different experience from both Yogananda and Ernest Holmes. And if we did Mountain of Silence, and you have the Eastern Orthodox monks, and that's a different vibration. And so all of these teachings, we say, and these are the mystical teachings. This isn't about what's our theology. These are all teachers who are about going into the direct contact with this one. And yet even that is different. That when we start going more deeply into our path, which I believe everyone here has, we start to recognize that there are different ways to experience it. So one of the fundamental ways, and so this came up across again this past week. That's why there's spiritual diversity has been so much in my world in the last 2 weeks that there's so I have to remember which ones I want to think about. So I had I had the most lovely experience, lunch that was really an experience for about 2 or 3 hours with someone who I know from Oakland. And they're a practitioner, science of mind practitioner, but they primarily, I would say, identify as a non-dualist. Now, to be clear, Ernest Holmes' favorite philosopher was Plotinus, who was a non-dualist. So I think sometimes people forget our teaching is a lot of non-duality to it, but that's for another day. Or maybe not, we'll see. But a non-dualist is very Zen, actually. Non-duality and Zen go very well together because they have a very different cosmology, and this goes to our cosmology. How am I going to say this? So it's hard to say because non-dualists really hate dogma. So they don't really believe in anything. What they believe is right here and right now. That it's just, this is it. And to be fully present. And in fact, there is really no individual self. The ultimate is to die completely to your individual self. And in fact, when we do die, we won't continue on as individual souls. We will just merge with this infinite oneness. And that this oneness is always happening. It's underneath all of us. So there is a presence you're witnessing, but you're also living as everything. And there gets to be hard to talk when you're in a non-dual situation because there's really words are also limiting. We heard that in the reading this morning. Words are so limiting. And so this is the place from which this person who I had lunch with last week, speaks from. So the conversation was very interesting because language is not something he particularly cares for because it limits. But we had a long conversation without at the same time saying, but words are so limiting. And there's no question that in that time, that spaciousness, that amazing freedom, that lightness of being, that just letting go was fun and extraordinary. And definitely, he wasn't that he just had a philosophy of this, he lived this. This was his teaching. And so sometimes it's hard for him to be in science of mind because a lot of science of mind is how to get what we want. And to him, there's nothing to want. Everything is just perfect as it is. So that's a cosmology that impacts how one lives one's life. Paramahansa Yogananda, and I think has a philosophy. I can go on. That's why I have to be careful, because he and Holmes are a lot alike, and then there's some significant differences. But in the way that they're a lot alike is that the individual soul, our individual soul, is actually very important to grow and to evolve and to wake up. And that as we grow and evolve, we become more and more one with not just our physical body, with the oneness, but our energy body and our causal body, and that there's all, and so it all gets, at the highest level, deepest level, it immerses itself and becomes one with everything, and yet is still an individuated soul, which we can't describe humanly. And so the development of the soul is very important to Yogananda and that form, and as it is for Ernest Holmes. Now again, a difference. Ernest Holmes is more focused on allowing that oneness, that individuality to express in the world. He spends a lot of time focusing how we're going to express through money, through our jobs, through what our purpose is. Where Yogananda he talks about that as well, but most of his lessons are focused in how to wake up to your oneness. So the tools are all about how do I know my oneness? How do I know my oneness? Where with Ernest Holmes, it's, okay, I know my oneness, now how do I express my oneness into the world? And Ken Wilber calls that ascension and descension. One's focused on ascension, waking up to our oneness, and descension is the expression into form. Again, oneness, it's all one, but where the attention goes our life choices, how we choose to live life. And then Shunryu Suzuki it doesn't matter. And it's not just it's non-dual Eckhart Tolle. When everyone's reading Eckhart Tolle, that's just be present in the moment. We're not traditional, not the monks so much, but traditional Christianity is get to heaven, do well here so you have a good life in the hereafter. Again, that's future-oriented, so you're making choices today for the future. I come from a family that's agnostic and atheist. So my dad was an atheist. That means he was clear. He wasn't doubting. He wasn't maybe not. This is it. When you die, this is it. That informs how you live your life. My mother was agnostic. And there's different types of agnostic. There's, for everything, there's a range. You're all looking over there. Oh, there's kids. Hi, kids. Oh, they're going inside now. How fun. Okay, so agnostic is, in the way that my mother is an agnostic, is she's pretty sure nothing happens after you die. She doesn't know. She's open to say, well, I might know. I hope we do. But basically, I don't think that we go on, but I don't know. What that does for how you live your life, or at least my experience, and what's interesting is my parents had totally different personality. My dad was very introverted and serious. My mom was very extroverted and social and joyful. But both of them had the exact same values, and it had a lot to do with their cosmology, because their cosmology is, there's nothing else but this. I don't know about anything else, but I know this exists, so every minute counts. My mom says she remembers walking down a hallway and a teacher was yelling at the class to be quiet because they had just wasted 5 minutes and they will never have that 5 minutes back again. And for my mom, that mattered. Every minute counts. This is it. So that's how she's lived her life. She has lived her life like every moment is the most important moment, and I'm going to get the most out of it that I possibly can. I'm not waiting. There's nothing to wait for to live fully. My dad, life is important. This is the life that matters. So you do everything that you possibly can to make this world a better place. And it's not to get something in the future. It is all very focused here. That's a definite cosmology that informs how they show up in the world, the choices that they make, their conversations, their values of how what's fascinating about my parents is externally, and this goes into the external and the internal, externally their personalities are completely different. But as kids, sometimes you like to split your parents. We could never do it because they had the exact same values, and they were friends until, even though they separated and divorced, they were friends until my dad made a transition, because that was their values. That they do the good and right thing, and they appreciate it. They always had the same views on everything. It was crazy. You just couldn't make any headway as a kid, but a little frustrating. No divide and conquers, impossible. But what it showed me was how much our cosmologies impact how we show up in the world, how we have a conversation. So I took an East Asian religion class in college, and my teacher was Eastern Asian, and he said one thing about being around people who believed in reincarnation was there's sort of a relaxed. We've got all eternity. We got lots of lifetimes. And there was a sense of, we don't have to make everything better right here and right now. We don't have to fix everything. It's like, yeah, we'll get there eventually. Or we can, in our own teaching, we're always growing. We have other lives to grow into. There's no hurry. It changes the whole way we approach how we show up today and how we have a conversation. So a non-dualist are not like my parents. Because even though they're very present, this life is important, a non-dualist will say, it's important, but it's always going to be here. It's just this is the only thing that's real. So there's a relaxedness, but there's also a total presentness. So a non-dualist is going to be very present in the moment, but they're not trying to get anywhere because there's nowhere to get to. You're not trying to make anything happen. You're not trying to fix anything. It's just perfect as it is. Where with my family, they were definitely trying to make the world a better place. Their life, everyone's life, they wanted to fix the planet. They're working on it still. I'll let you know how they're doing. But so all of these different, do you see how all these different cosmologies impact us? So even when I'm having lunch with my friend, I've spent several years, I was doing Shunryu Suzuki and Zen meditation. I also was reading, I spent months with Ramana Maharshi, who's a non-dualist, and learning integral theory. A lot of integralists are non-dualists. So I was sort of immersed in the non-dual world for several years. And I loved it. I mean, there's something extraordinary, freeing, and open and available. I would go jogging because everything is happening in the isness. And this isn't just words. I would actually experience, it was like my body was moving inside of me. Like I was the stillness and the body was jogging inside of me. I mean, so it's fun. Like non-duality is a great place to hang out. But what I found was it wasn't me. And I've talked about it before where I've done all these different paths. I did Yogananda. I love Yogananda. Then I found these monks. And when I found these monks, and it wasn't immediate. I didn't write a book and go, oh, this is my home. But there was such a strong resonance. These are Eastern Orthodox Christian monks who I never heard of. I only known sort of the Western Catholicism, but the Eastern was much more, for me, mystical. And so as I'm reading, it's calling me. So over the years, it's just getting deeper and deeper. This is my home. This is my path. And I've mentioned it, and I've talked about it before, where there's just this moment where, like, I'm home. I'm not seeking anymore. I don't need to go trying to find something else. I'm home. And I knew it. And as I'm talking, it was so beautiful, because the person I was talking with, who's giving a talk today, when we emailed this morning, hey, I'm with you. So, he was describing his own childhood. So he's been on this journey like I have been in a very conscious way for many, many decades, and has involved himself in different spiritual journeys with different teachers. And he has found the place where he's home, where he doesn't feel like he's searching anymore. And he said, well, he was raised, his family was Unitarian, but basically they didn't go, and it was agnostic. And he describes himself now as sort of an agnostic non-dualist, which go well together. Because he says, I don't have a cosmology. I don't know what happens when I die. I don't have any belief about that. I just know here, now, in this moment. And I thought, well, isn't it interesting that we've been on our whole journeys, both of us, and the place where I came home to was where I began as a child, which was with my connection with the Christ, and where you came home to was your agnostic non-duality. Paramahansa Yogananda says that if you really want to know what your purpose is, to go back to your child, to anchor with that self. I think our home has a lot to do with where we began as children. But our homes are different than when we were children. Because included in my home are all these other paths that I get to explore and participate in, as I know everyone here has. Shunryu, Maharshi, Aurobindo, Yogananda, they're all part of me. And I still like to learn from them. Everything I'm learning from Ernest Holmes, every time I learn from them, it just gets integrated into my home, which is different than I'm trying to get something, I'm trying to find something. I've already found it, I'm already living it, and now I'm integrating it. And so I want to just bring that last bit home. So we understand spiritual diversity. There are some people, when we go into that oneness, how we experience that oneness, what we want from that oneness, how we live from that oneness is going to be different. The invitation is to, first of all, enjoy your own spiritual diversity, your paths, and to know your own cosmology. What I love about Centers for Spiritual Living, why I was drawn to it and continue to be drawn to it, we do have a dogma. We have both. And we have a base teaching, non-dualistic, no dogma, we're one. But then we have definite philosophical stands. For example, I was in the practitioner retreat a few weeks ago, and they were talking about, I just happened to mention about Yogananda healing someone by putting his hand on his shoulder, and the shoulder getting healed instantly, and someone said, well, we don't do that in Science of Mind because we don't believe in laying in hands. And I thought, well, that would be dogma, because now we've just said something's right and something's wrong. And the question is what's effective? Can they both be right? Can they work together? Can we understand why one would work? And I love what one of my students said a few weeks ago, which is they love the word preference. Not that one is right or which is wrong. I just prefer. We can have a preference. So we have to be careful that I hear in Science of Mind all the time, we're teaching without dogma. Oh, yes, we have our dogma. Let's be honest about it, because you always know your own personal dogma when someone hits a sacred cow. Like, you're not supposed to do that. Then you've hit a sacred cow. And this is, again, the diversity versus separation. We can be different and know that we're one versus separate, right, wrong. That's separation. I totally forgot what I was talking about. Ernest Holmes. Oh, Centers for Spiritual Living. What I also love about, I'm not saying that we don't have our dogma, but we also have at the base and the foundation of this teaching, of these communities most people I find are not that dogmatic, because most people who are drawn to these communities, not just this one, there's Centers for Spiritual Living everywhere, are people who have explored, who have these diverse spiritual journeys, who have had other teachers besides Ernest Holmes, who have had other experiences where you've enmeshed yourself in another teacher and another path and really allowed it to teach us. And so even in this one room, everybody here, if we started talking about what your journey of oneness has looked like, it's included Ernest Holmes probably. I bet everyone here has studied Ernest Holmes and knows the principles, but you've also learned and given yourself to other teachers and learned from them and allow them to take you deep within yourself. And that's what I love about our teaching, is that it allows for the oneness, but allows us all to be our own individual journey. What's interesting is, as many of you know, I just temporarily was a minister over at Unity Church for 2 years, where I met Michelle and Beta. And so Unity, strangely to me, I knew it, but actually being there, I really got to me that they actually really teach exactly what we teach. They teach the exact same principles. I thought there might be some differences, little nuances, but they really teach what we teach. The difference is, and what we always learned in class, is that Unity uses those principles primarily for Christianity, primarily for the Bible and Jesus. They tend to take the principles and really delve into the Christian aspect, where Centers for Spiritual Living isn't quite as focused on the Bible or Jesus. It's more focused on the principles. And I would just make that a little different, because Unity is just as focused on the principles. So I thought, well, they're both, but they're pretty clear about what the principles are. What I love I think there's a soul group that's as powerful as any religion, and I think it's called integral. Now, there's a whole theory called integral theory, which you have to get to a certain stage of development to being. That's not what I'm talking about. I think it's a soul call, and people who've been integral, all of you, my bet, have been somewhat integral your whole life. And when I listen to people's story, well, I was in a church and I knew that wasn't right. I'm like, well, what about all those other religions? Or, people, you were questioning things from when you were young. If you went to a church and you were given a certain, it's not whether you were for or against it, you might have been, but you also are like, but there's more. This isn't answering, there's more. And I find people who are drawn to this teaching have led diverse spiritual journeys, that whatever your base was, there's a part of you that's had to go out and seek other people. I still to this day don't, even though my home feels very much in the Christ, I do not identify myself as Christian. That feels like a box that I feel locked in, and I would never be happy living in that box, because I love, they are part of me. I wear a ring. Jesus, Yogananda, and Shinrazuki. I love my spiritual teachers. And not just those three, but the ones, when I learn from someone, I give myself to their energy. That's why I did the reading with, your masters beyond the language, that when you're reading a book, it's not just the words. If you really give yourself to it, you're tapping into their vibration, and you're letting it shift the energy inside of you, and we're having that experience. And so if there's a teacher that you've ever just read one book, you've read several of theirs, or you just keep coming back to that same book, that's a spiritual journey that you have gone on, whether it's completely by yourself or with a group of people. It doesn't matter. You've been on this journey with this particular spiritual teacher. You've given themselves. And so as a community, I find in a community like this, there's just this, and I think unity is becoming more like this, actually. They're getting a little bit less Jesus and Bible-centered and much more diverse. The spiritual richness of this community, of that says we love our oneness, and we love our oneness in all the different ways that we express our oneness, because everyone here expresses their oneness differently. So the invitation, and I just want to highlight the point of really getting that it is different. So when I was having that lunch this past week, and it was with my non-dualist friend, I can give myself to non-duality, but it's not my home. And so it was so beautiful to experience our oneness as we're having this lunch. It was this incredible depth. It was definitely beyond words. That's why I was telling Jack, I'm struggling with the talk, because the feelings, they really do go beyond language. This is about diversity that is below language, that is below concept. It's a feeling, and we're with each other and we're feeling our oneness, but there's no question we are distinctly different in our ways that we express, and how beautiful it was. We both left feeling so richer, more full. And I think that's what we love. People who come to communities like that, we love the diversity, don't we? Do you feel that? Do you enjoy when you're talking to someone and feeling the way they express their oneness? And I don't mean personality out in the world. I mean deep in their spirituality. You can feel their vibration, the way they're with their oneness, whether it's non-dualistic, whether it's I, thou, whether it's I'm trying to grow my soul, or it's whether I want to live my purpose. All these different ways we want to express or know the oneness. I just want to simply be in the moment, the present moment. I have no desires. I have no attachments. I'm just present. All of it. An agnostic or an atheist. I got to change the world. We love it. That's why we're here. So the intentions today is really understand spiritual diversity. Really enjoy the diversity of your own spiritual journey. Recognize that how diverse your own spiritual journey is, and that accept all of it, integrate all of it. And then also with that, loving and enjoying other people's spiritual diversity, the way they've done oneness, which could be completely different from you, but it's diversity, not separation. And lastly, to really understand what your own cosmology is. What is your own home? Where are you on your own journey right now? Are you still sort of seeking that home? Are you still sort of like, I might try that because that's kind of might be it, or it might be, and by the way, I did that for decades, so there's no hurry. That gives a hit to my cosmology. But what is your cosmology about do you feel home? Do you feel at home and you're just integrating new information into your home, or are you still seeking? That's one question about your cosmology. And the second part of your cosmology is really to understand, because every teaching talks about it, and it's amazing how it's just been hammered home to me in the last 2 weeks, how we feel about death. And I don't mean the actual leaving our body, but what we think happens when we die impacts how we have a conversation today. It impacts choices, that how we live our life today has everything to do with what I think happens when I die, when my grand cosmology. We think of that as sort of extra. I don't need to have but even if you don't, even that, I don't think it's very important. That impacts how I'm going to have my conversation and the choices that I make today. That's part of your cosmology, is I don't think it's very important. That informs how you live your life. So be conscious. That's the biggest one. The other ones are just sort of feeling stuff. This one is to really think about this week. What is your cosmology, and how is it impacting your great cosmology of how the universe works, and how is it impacting the conversation you're having right now? How does it impact the choices you're going to make today for how you're going to spend your day, or how you're going to spend your week, or what you're going to do for your work, or all the choices that you make? How is that cosmology impacting it? Because that's when it gets really fun and really exciting. Spiritually diverse. You guys love this? Isn't this so fun? I can't wait to hear about all your teachers. That's how we had our lunch. We just told each other our spiritual journeys and our teachers and our experiences with the teachers. It's so fun. Have a conversation with someone. Ask them about who their teachers have been. And just listen. Let them just tell you what their teachers and what they've learned from them. Oh, it's so rich.